Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here at tutorial number 2, during which we have quite a bit of work to do on summarizing and paraphrasing mainly, a bit of summary work and so on. So let's get straight to it and start our PowerPoint. Our aims today are that we're working towards assignment number 2, which is due in 2 weeks' time on the 11th of August. We will have one more tutorial this time next week on the 4th, but the next assignment is a comprehension assignment with a summary. And that's what we're working on. Please keep up with all the materials that are steadily being added to lessons, and as I make them available, you should please study them. I'm trying to help you to pace yourself in that way. Good. Now, as I said, our short story for this week that we're basing our reading and comprehension on is Leaving. It is, of course, in Funda under Resources, and wave at me if you read it. I can see you there. Destiny Live. Eden. Oh, good. I see a hand waving. That's wonderful. Great. Okay. And it was written by an Indian man called Mustafa Sanji. And what I'm going to ask you later is, why is the word leaving a good title for the story? So think about that while we do this and that. And I wonder if you've got the story in front of you, or if you've made a note of your answers, because the first question that I gave you under lessons was vocabulary, right? I wanted you to find words on the page, the first 2 pages, which were 114 and 115. That mean more or less the same as a busy noisiness. If you know the answer to any of these, then please type 1.1 and the answer. Type it in the chat, because that is the easiest way for me to check everybody's answers. It takes an awful long time for me to mute my mic and get the right person to unmute theirs, so we'd rather use typing. 2, woods and groups of smaller similar trees. So a whole lot of pear trees together. Apart from the fact that fruit trees are an orchard, what do we call a group of trees? Cautiously, raucous or stormy. Tempting but out of reach, desirable but teasing. 6, suitors, people who want to marry you. Adoring and worshipping. Abandoned and ghostly. Okay, so I don't see any answers yet. Anyone got an answer for busy noisiness? I'll just give you a second while I'm looking for it on the page. A busy noisiness. So it has to be a noun, okay? Noisiness. And the answer is yes, good, well done, bustle. B-U-S-T-L-E, the bustle of Uhuru Street. And Uhuru, of course, means Freedom Street, the new name of their street. Well done. 1.2, woods or groups of similar trees. I said not orchard. There is a word there, and it is groves, G-R-O-V-E-S. They said there that there were scary baobab trees and mango and coconut groves. Right. What about 1.3? Can you do that one? Cautiously, cautiously. In other words, being careful. The answer is guardedly. Guardedly. You know, when you guard something, you look after it very carefully, and they are guarding their opinions. So they don't want to stick their neck out. These were the universities that Alu applied to. He wanted to go and study in America. And when they answered him, because his results were so brilliant, they were guardedly encouraging. So they didn't promise him a place, but they were cautiously optimistic about his chances. Right, now, what is a word that means you can do 1.4? Ah, yes, somebody's tried, and you've given me 2 options, raucous and stormy. And you can figure out which of those 2 words is needed, because it's an adjective. If something is raucous and stormy, then it is tumultuous. Very good. Tumultuous. Lots of tumult and storminess. A racket is a noun, but it also means a big noise. Very good. Okay. Now, if something is tempting but out of reach, it's desirable, but it's teasing you. You can't quite get it. Very good. I love the way you're trying these, and this is absolutely correct. Tantalizing. For example, if you are in a hurry and you have no time to stop for coffee, then the smell of coffee coming out of the shop as you walk past is tantalizing. You'd love some coffee, but you absolutely can't have any. Good. Now 1.6. Suitors, yes, they are wooers, and evidently their eldest sister Mehrun was popular. She had a whole succession of wooers or suitors who wanted to marry her. And the word for adoring or worshipping, that's correct, well done. Adulating. When this man, another Indian man, came back from America, Mr. Datu, the little boys ran around him and they worshipped him. They thought he was amazing. Finally, there is a word that means abandoned, ghostly, and that is desolate. Desolate is a lovely word because it means almost haunted, and you can use it for your feelings as well. So you can say, when my boyfriend broke up with me, I felt desolate. Okay, good. Well done there. Vocabulary. Let's go on to questions 2 to 5. There you go. So, this whole story, we know about Uhuru Street. We know there's a suburb called Upanga. But what's the city's name? Did you pick that up? Could you tell? I'll read the part that gives you a hint. Razia, this is the second oldest child, their older sister, was a wealthy housewife in Tanga, a coastal line north of Dar. So he just calls it Dar. Do you know the full name? Dar es Salaam. Dar es Salaam. Okay, and that is the capital city of which country? Did you find that out at all? This is a city in Central Africa, and it is Tanzania. Good, you got that right. Perfect. Tanzania. That's right. And Tanzania does have a big Indian population, although most of the people are, of course, African. And why had the street name changed? Why did they change their name? They had an ordinary Tanzanian name, Kichwele, and they changed it to Uhuru because the country had become independent from England. Remember that England had been the colonizing power of Tanzania. And so they celebrated by calling this big street Freedom Street. Why is that a good opening line? Kichwele Street was now Uhuru Street. It's too long to ask you to answer on the chat, so let me tell you. In one short sentence, he tells everyone who knows that part of Tanzania that this story is set in Dar es Salaam and it's after independence, not long after independence. So you immediately know the setting. Setting is an important word you need to talk about when you are talking about works of literature. And the setting has got two aspects, time and place. So the setting is Central Africa, Tanzania, and after independence in the, I'm pretty sure it was the late 60s. Right. And number 4, see if you can type the name of a sport here for me. Which sport was clearly popular in their area? And you know, because their older sister, Mehroon, the one who was so popular, eventually chose somebody who played this sport for the school team and for the town. No, not football, you know, you might think it's football, but these are Indian people, not African people, and they are crazy about cricket. Okay, and you picked that up when you read that Mehroon married and opening bat, automatically a hero because he was so good at batting that he went in first to go and bat in a match. Okay, and how many children did the narrator's mother have altogether? So we know about the narrator and 5 children. Excellent. Yes. Mehroon, Razia, the rich housewife. Then he mentions Firoz, a brother, who didn't do well at school and he just works for a local shop or something. And then there's himself. He's at university now. He comes home for weekends. And his little brother, still in high school, called Alu. And Alu was bright and clever. Okay. Now let's go on to questions 6 to 8. You can just tell me yes or no. What do you think? Are the boys happy when they move into a richer part of town? Yes or no? You kind of expect the answer to be yes, but you are quite right. Well done. The answer is no, because they are so used to the racket, as you said, the tumultuous surroundings of Uhuru Street, that living in leafy suburbs is not their idea of a good life. They find it spooky there. It's too quiet. Okay. And number 7. The writer never says to us, this is a tropical region with abundant vegetation and lots of fruit trees, but he does convey to us that it is a tropical setting. And how does he do that? By describing detail. He says things like, there were overgrown bushes, large, scary baobab trees, and mango and coconut groves. Now, you don't get whole woods of mango trees except where it is tropical and very lush. Remember, that's a very nice word for where the vegetation is very good. I'm trying to get this mouse to behave. There you go. That's a good phrase. Okay. Now, in what way did Mr. Datu inspire Alu? How did he inspire him? You know, Alu looked at him and he thought, well, if he can go and study in America and make a success of his life there, then I can too. Excellent. That's what you said. Eden, wonderful. He went to study in America. He got the idea of studying in America from Mr. Datu, because in his own family, nobody had that kind of ambition. All right, now question number 9. This is a quote. Mother's response to all of these efforts was to humor him. His efforts were trying to write to American universities and get someone to accept him. Okay. Now, what does that mean when it says her response was to humor him? She, let's see. Yeah, you've got it already. Perfect. 9.4. Please don't think that humoring means that she laughed at him. She didn't warn him. And she really didn't think he could possibly succeed, so she just indulged him. And that is 9.4. Very good. Number 10. Now, Alu's methods for finding a university, were they overambitious, haphazard, conceited, or embarrassing? You know what? I don't really agree that they were over-ambitious. They were ambitious, yes, but they were not over-ambitious for the simple reason that he succeeded. So he wasn't being too ambitious, because in the end, he got into a university in America because he was bright enough. So try another one. 10.1 is out. Conceited, haphazard, embarrassing. Yes, you're right, it's haphazard. And haphazard is a very good word to know. It means random, hit and miss, here and there, shot in the dark. All those expressions explain it. Because he knew nothing, you know, he knew nothing about America. So he just went to the library and randomly chose a few universities' names and wrote them letters. Conceited would be unkind to say. He wasn't vain, he was ambitious and hopeful. And no, he wasn't embarrassing anyone, although some children would have been too embarrassed to try. Okay, well done. Let's look at the next set of questions, and welcome to our viewer who has joined us at home. Let me just see if I've got any questions from them. No questions yet. Great. Okay, let's go back to question 11. And that is, why does Alu's mother speak of shillings instead of dollars? She's always talking about, yeah, good, I've already got the answer. You're great, yeah. That is the currency of Tanzania, shillings. And so she has no conception of dollars. They have to tell her how many shillings that would be. Number 12. Genetics, cosmology, and artificial intelligence. Well, those are long questions, so I'll just answer them. In genetics, you study genes, the genetic makeup of anything, from a simple plant to a human being. That's what you study in genetics. In cosmology, you study the cosmos, and that means the whole world beyond the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything. And in artificial intelligence, you study computer intelligence, calculators, all that kind of thing. But it's, of course, it's mainly computers. Right. Now, what is ironical about his selection for a local university? Alu had no problem getting into a local university. He was a clever boy, and they accepted him. But in Tanzania, you weren't really free to choose what you wanted to go and study. You know, they do this in many countries. In South Africa, we're lucky. We decide, I want to go and study so-and-so, and you see if your results are good enough, you are free to go and apply. But type, if you know, tell me, what was he chosen to go and study? What did he have to go and study at the local university? Anybody? Let me see. Agriculture. And that's quite right. That is exactly what was ironical, because Alu was not interested in agriculture. He was a city boy. He had grown up in the city. Once he had to go off into the countryside because the school took him. But it was obviously a very, very bad choice for him. And in fact, that is why his mother started helping him, because she could see, no, this is nonsense. All right. I want to just go back to that very first question that I said I would ask you. Why is leaving a good title for this story? Now, it's quite a long, complicated answer, so I don't expect you to type it, but it has two meanings. First of all, it just means that he leaves school, he goes to university, and then he leaves to go and study at university. But the real meaning, the sad meaning, is that he leaves forever. Do you remember they went and visited that local character, the man who knew more than they did about studying and abroad and all that sort of thing? And he warned the mother. He said, you know, if you let him go, you will lose him forever. And actually, one thing we know about Mr. Basanji, the writer, who might well be the narrator, because I think this is kind of autobiographical, is living in Toronto, Canada. So he went overseas and he never went back to Tanzania, which is rather sad because their mother would have missed them badly. But I'm sure they help her to have a better life. So there we go. Now we're going to look at paraphrasing. This is a really important skill, as you know, and you need it because if you don't paraphrase well enough, then you will be guilty of infringing copyright if you use sources and you don't change them enough. So let's look at these examples that I've got here. And I want to say one more thing about quoting. And that is, you know, if somebody has said something in a book that is just marvelous, and you couldn't say it better if you lived to be 200 years old, that's when you quote. You quote it in full, word for word, and you use quotation marks. And then you give your reference in brackets, in line, right there in your text of where it comes from, and also in your bibliography. You give credit to the book. So, as usual, you have to go to your academic guidelines and study them carefully and see exactly how to do all that. But most of the time, we don't want to quote something. We just want to use the general information and ideas. And the wonderful thing is, of course, there's no copyright on ideas. Ideas are free. What is copyrighted by law are the words that the writer used to express that idea. His words are protected. You can't use the same words in the same way. So that's why we have to learn to put the same idea in different words. Okay, now this one is not very easy, but it's not too difficult either. So have a look at it, number one. And I know these are difficult because you haven't got a context. You don't know it's in the middle of something, but let's just look at these sentences. Come, celebrate their unquenchable spirit and resolve at this critically important juncture. So you have to prove that you can understand all that, and you want to say the same thing, but in different words. What do we normally quench? Not spirit, we normally quench our thirst. You quench your thirst. If you drink water, you are quenching your thirst. So if a spirit is unquenchable, it means it's never satisfied. It's always hungry for new information, new enjoyment, new ways of expressing itself, okay? What is resolve when it's a noun? You've got to make sure you understand all this. Their resolve means their determination. If you didn't know that, write it down, because it's a very good academic word. It's a formal English word, and you can use it instead of something like determination. And evidently, whoever they are at a critically important juncture. Critically means extremely. It's a key juncture. And a juncture is just an intersection, a place of joining. So where the past joins the future, and it gives the impression of a crossroads, that in fact they've got to make a choice now, and they are going to do that at this point. So how on earth do you say all that in your own English? You've got a lot of time, so if you have prepared anything, you're welcome to type it in under number 1, 2, or 3, but otherwise I'll just help you. I think the best way to say it is not to start with the invitation come, because then immediately it's like the original sentence. That's a very good tip. Try and turn the sentence around, start at the end or something like that. So you can say, they, we don't know who they are, so we'll just say they. They have to make extremely important choices, but they are full of resolution, or determination is better because it's different, and they are, I'm thinking for unquenchable spirit, they are full of fiery determination. There you are. So please join in their happiness. Instead of come celebrate, join in their happiness. Instead of beginning of the sentence, it's at the end of the sentence. And what I will do, everyone, is I will put these answers up under resources, okay, so that you'll be able to see them. And it will be even better if you try them yourself and then compare them to mine, because then you will really learn. Sitting back and passively listening and watching, it's okay, but you learn much more when you try first yourself. All right, let's look at 2. These very fluid social units made strong centralized leadership or chieftainship impossible and indeed unnecessary. So let's first understand, what do we have here? We have got some kind of a social unit. We're talking about units, social units. They could be families or tribes, or it's bigger than one little family, because we're talking about centralized leadership. So let's say it's a big community or even a nation. But evidently the social units are fluid. That means they're not fixed. They flow naturally. And it says you do not need, it's unnecessary to have chiefs or to have a strong leader where everything is held together in the center somehow. And in fact, he even says it would be impossible to govern these people like that, because they are so fluid, they wouldn't understand it. And just for interest's sake, I can tell you that this comes from a book about the San people, who are also sometimes called the Bushmen. And I used to think that that was an insulting name until I read a book recently in which it said they actually quite like that name. They think of themselves as men of the bush. They don't mind that name. So there you go. And they are so democratic in their way of life and their way of interacting with each other that if you try to say, look, I'm now the boss, You won't get anywhere because they'll simply ignore you, and if they think they've got a better idea, they'll do it. So how are we going to say this now? Instead of starting with the social units, we're going to start with the leadership, and we're going to use totally different words. Okay. It is not possible, and in fact not even needed. Now let's not start with it. I'm thinking aloud now. Let's rather say, having a chief or a strong central government is not necessary, and in fact it isn't even possible because of the changeable social units in the community. Okay. A changeable, maybe that's not the best word, because of the essentially democratic, you could say that. They're in their essence, they are democratic. So democratic that as the people, they just simply demand to be the bosses whenever they've got the best idea. Okay. Then, number 3, Campbell, this is a writer, is profoundly aware of the severance he is effecting, not simply from Africa and its people, but more alarmingly from a dark, fructifying inner source. Now, you can see that this paraphrasing is a challenge because there are so many difficult words there. But if you've got to sit with the dictionary, you've got to sit with the dictionary sometimes and make sure that some important passages are clear to you. Now, what was happening was that Campbell had roots in Africa, but he was learning more and more English, becoming more and more westernized, and he could feel, he was profoundly aware, he could feel that he was severing himself. Now, to sever is to cut something away from something else, to cut it in half. And to effect something means to make it happen. It is quite different from with an A, which means to have an influence on it. That's the common one that we all know. If you affect something, have an influence on it, you spell that with an A. But he was effecting, he was making this cut happen. Okay? And what he's saying is that he was cut off from Africa, but he was cut off from his roots inside himself, his deep, dark roots. And fructifying is a wonderful formal English word that means bearing fruit. Now, I lived overseas for 10 years before I came back, and I know exactly what he means. When you are far away from Africa where you were born, you feel that my roots have been cut. I need some sort of a deep source of energy, and I'm not getting it. Okay, so let's try and say this differently. Okay. Campbell was cutting himself off from his roots in Africa, and he knew it. He knew that he was no longer in touch with the source of his energies. Okay. As I've said before, you know, this is really difficult to do if you don't know the context. So that's why sometimes I can do it, and I don't think that you should feel worried if you wouldn't have been able to do that in exactly the same way. I know where it came from. Ah, but number four you could do. Give it a try. The origin and dating of this material, however, are subject to considerable dispute. So, some other material, it doesn't matter what, It could be bones or pottery or anything. You can't change that word because we don't know what it was. We just say material. If they are subject to something, it means there's something happening around them. Dispute is happening. People are arguing, debating. And they are debating about where these things or this thing came from and how old it is, right? So the origin and dating of this material, however, are subject to considerable dispute. So you have to start at the end, somehow turn the sentence around. And again, we don't know who exactly is disputing, so we can say they or people. They are debating heatedly. Heatedly means with fiery feelings. They are debating heatedly how old this material is and where it comes from. So you see, I'm just using descriptive words instead of single words for origin and dating. But I have changed that sentence enough so nobody can accuse me of plagiarism. Okay, right. Let's go on to number 5. No one familiar with history should be surprised that the growing democratic deficit in the United States is accompanied by a declaration of messianic missions to a suffering world. Now, this is a very left-wing commentator. In fact, it's a man I admire very much. His name is Noam Chomsky, and he has said this. He says, if you know history, you won't be surprised. Okay? No one familiar with history should be surprised that. Okay? He says there's a democratic deficit growing in the United States. Now, everybody thinks America is the greatest democracy in the world, but he says no. He says it's getting less democratic as time goes by. And he has complicated reasons for saying that. And then he also says, at the same time, because it's accompanied by declarations, I think that should be a plural, of messianic missions to a suffering world. Now, messianic, it's an adjective you should know and remember because it comes from the word Messiah, okay? Messianic missions to a suffering world. So the Americans say, oh, we are your saviors, we are coming, we know you are suffering, we will help you. And while they are doing that, actually they are depriving their own people of some of their democratic rights. And Chomsky anyway says that they're doing it on purpose. So how do we say this in different words? We could say something like, the United Nations announces to the world that it will come to the rescue of needy people. But in fact, as we see from history, their democracy at home is being undermined. Okay. So you can see that that's something totally different in the wording, but I hope you can recognize that it's actually the same idea. Good, this is paraphrasing. Now you must also try and do 6 and 7, okay? And then you can go on to the resources and find the answers after you've tried them yourself. Okay. But I just want to ask you to do this as well. At least one of them maybe you can do quickly, but if you can do them all, so much the better, because it's wonderful practice for you. Now I've put on your resources, I've given you a good video that describes how to summarize in detail that passage on Finland. I hope you've looked at it carefully. And of course, as I say here, as we summarize, we extract keywords and essential meanings. And we can do this on different levels. So in other words, you can take a passage of 90 words and summarize it into 30 words, and you've actually got pretty much everything in there. It's a very, very thorough summary. But you could also summarize it in 8 words, and then you leave out a lot. So it just depends. If you are students, you have to read so many books, I know. And some of them you just have to summarize in a paragraph or two. You've got to say what this writer was going on about. So sometimes you summarize intensively, trying to retain all the key facts, and sometimes you summarize ruthlessly, cutting out almost everything. Okay, so it's clear why this is an essential skill for your reading and research. Okay, now, here are what the things I suggest that you do. The first is, take those first 2 pages of leaving, the pages that we got those words from, because you know those 2 pages pretty well by now, and summarize everything on those 2 pages in not more than 90 words. Okay? Do this for yourself at home. And when you've done it, take your summary and summarize that in only 30 words. And you'll see, okay, this is, I get it. This is the skill. You take out the essence and then you can do it again. You can take out the essence of the essence until you are left with more and more of the central key ideas. And then I ask you to summarize the whole story of leaving in 90 words, not more than 110. And you can do it. 90 words is very little. But you try it, you'll see it can be done. You just leave out all the details, all the narrative, and give the essence of what actually happened. And then you take that summary of 90 words and summarize it in 30 words. In other words, the whole story in 30 words. Okay? Give it a try. And as I said, I will put these answers up in under resources for you. So you'll be able to check yours and see how well you've done. If you do all this work, you will not be sorry. It's a skill you're going to need for your academic studies, quite apart from the fact that, of course, you need it for the exam. So nice to see you, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye.